Now I'm going to show you a fun little idea I came up with. I thought, why don't I just outline white flowers with the white acrylic paint using the Gouda bottle. And what we'll do is we'll paint the background using colors that don't move in water. So I'll be talking about which colors move in water and which colors do not. And then paint the center of the flowers with colors that do move in water. So can you see how the centers here have bled out, but the colors around the white petals are very much intact. We're going to start by taking the Gouda bottle filled with white acrylic, and we're going to outline all the flowers. So you can see I've got the drawing of the white cone flowers, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to outline using my 7mm Gouda bottle. This means that more paint is flowing out. It's a pretty good size line. And whenever I do these petals, I'm completely enclosing them. So see, from the top all the way down and around until I come back, I completely enclose that with the white acrylic. And this is actually kind of fun. But when I do the cone head, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it open. See, don't draw this as a continuous line. Keep it open and spiky. And I would even put some little dots in here. And then be sure that you outline all of the stems and all of the leaves. And basically that's all there is to do. And then I'm going to come back and show you how to do the background. Now comes the exciting part. All my acrylic, my white acrylic that I squeezed out with my cute little Gouda bottle, is dry. So I'm going to start by wetting both sides of the paper. You've probably wondered, why do I wet both sides of the paper? The reason I do that is it keeps the paper wet longer. It keeps the paper flat. If you only wet one side of the paper, as you can see, it'll curl up. Now I want a lot of time to play, so having the paper really, really wet is going to give me a lot of play time. A lot of people just will tape their paper down with masking tape, and what that does is it creates buckling. It also is only wet on one side, so the paper dries more quickly. This is a much better system. Now I want a little tip to this. I want the colors to roll a bit. I know this is creating a little distortion, but it's important. I do want the colors to flow. And on my palette, and I've indicated the colors in the book, there are certain colors on my palette that move in water, and there are certain colors that do not move in water. Now one of the really good ones, hardly moves at all in water, is manganese blue. I love this color. It's so beautiful. And you can see that as I paint around the shapes here, and I'm using a round brush so that I have those nice points to get in between the shapes. What happens here is when I put this color down, it just stays where I put it. So I'm going to kind of work my manganese off to the edge here. Maybe throw a little paint in. Maybe even wet my brush and come in and lose the edge, because see, it's not going to lose its edge all by itself. These paints that don't move in water don't move in water, and that's it. Look at that. It's pretty cool. So I'm just going to bump it into the flower gently, and here too. Even with it tilted, it's not moving. I think it's a miracle. So what we're going to do is we're going to work our way around here. Like I say, I'm going to have some of this going off the edge, touching the edge, coming through. I want it considerably darker, popping this out just a little bit more. So I'm going to come in and really lay in some more of this darker value, especially over here. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to zigzag this color over here to the edge of the paper. So I'm going to come over here, work my way from here, over here, around this flower, and then I'm going to touch the edge here. See, it's very important to do this. I'm not just outlining the flowers, I'm connecting them in a beautiful shape to the edge of the paper. Even here, I'm going to come around, maybe throw some little spots, maybe come in and lose some of these edges into a nice soft, ooh, I might even save that little white there. Okay, now the next thing I want to do is zigzag back. Now we're ready to come in and add some lovely pink. I really want to put a dark purple background on this, but I wouldn't think of putting a mixed purple on here. So the next obvious thing is to come in and put pure pink and then put blue over that. So this is a little permanent rose. It's also called quinacridone rose. And so what I'm going to do here is when I put it on the white paper, you can see I'm going to get lovely whites. So I'm purposely going to come in and put this down on some of the white papers, white areas. And again, this is a color that doesn't move in water. So if I want that to look soft, edged, I have to literally come in and lose the edges. Because this color, you can paint it on an extremely wet surface and it will not move. And it's so funny because I've known this for years, but I hadn't thought about putting it into a lesson. And now I'm just thrilled with it. When I'm doing wet into wet backgrounds, I purposely choose colors that don't move much in water so that I can get this lovely control. Control is nice. Okay, now I want to also add a little pink into this area over here. The paper's still white, so if I come in with my quinacridone rose color, I'm obviously going to get pure pinky color. But as soon as it goes into the blues, I'm going to start getting some purples. And I want that too. But I first of all want to create as much pink as I think I need for this particular deal. Again, I'm thinking of zigzag. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this pink and go over the blue, knowing that this is now going to give me some purples. So if I go from this edge to this, see, I'm always connecting these shapes. So if I go from this pink over here and connect to this pink, oh yeah, that feels good. And then maybe come around here, come in here. Now I need to put some of these colors under here. So I'm actually going to mix the colors together now. I'm adding a little manganese together with this lovely permanent rose. And I'm now starting to get a mixed color, a purpley color. Again, I'm going to do a little spattering. So now we're starting to get a nice connection going here. Pure pink, some mixed purple. Over here I need a little bit more of the purpley color mixing in. I'll go a little bit warmer here. Put some of that warm up here. And see, because my paper is wet, they're just going to keep mixing together. We like that. We like that a lot. So you got to just have fun with this. Don't get too winged out. Now, if I have a purple here, I try to bring it over here. It's what I call bookending. I actually stole that term from Karen Knudsen. And we both love that term, bookend. That means if you have the color on one side, you better have it on the other too. Okay, now I'm pretty happy with my zig and zag. We're starting to get some of the purples in here. That's good. I think I'm going to do a little bit more mixed purple. So I'm taking some of my quinacridone rose and my manganese blue, and I'm going to really warm it up. I'm going to make it a little more with the warm colors. Now I'm going to go for the really dark purple. So this time I'm going to take my quinacridone pink, quinacridone rose, there's so many names for it, and I'm going to go into French ultramarine blue. Now French ultramarine is an opaque color, but I still keep it on my palette because it gives me these gorgeous, look at that purple. Oh, I love that. So using these two powerful colors, the Quin Rose, French ultramarine, you can see I can go from a cool purple to a warm purple. That's why I don't use store-bought purples. I like to mix my own. Now I've got a warm purple here and a cool purple here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my warm purple. I did set my paper down now so it's flat. And I'm going to really pop out in the focal area, which is basically this area. I'm going to come in here and really pop out some darks. And again, now remember the bookend idea. If I go on one side, I have to go on the other. And I don't want to lose some of these nice lights, so as much as I can, I try to save a little bit of that. Maybe I'll come over here, zigzag here a bit. So I try to fit in all these little edges, these little corners. That's what's fun. And see, that white is keeping them from flowing in. So when I can, I try to get into these little corners to pop them out. Isn't that fun? Now my paper's getting a little dry, so you can see I'm going to wet my brush, shake it out. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to lose those edges because I want this to remain wet. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my sprayer. With my hand moving, I'm going to keep this wet. And especially these centers. We still haven't had the fun of putting those colors in yet. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna zigzag with this darker value purple. And I'm gonna go in and out, zigzag. I might go a little bit more purpley now, darker purple. I keep finding that when people have like a stem or something, they go, oh good, now I can quit. But you can't. You have to go from the top to the bottom, from one side to the next. It's almost like you're looking through the subject and you're just seeing the background. Now I don't want to cover up exactly everything, so I'm kind of zigzagging. I think I might come in with just a little bit more of this manganese under here because I like that blue and I'd like to see that blue connect a little bit more. I'm going to do just a little bit more lost edges. Remember, I'm going to wet my brush, shake it, take the extra moisture off, and I'm going to come in and lose some of these edges that seem to be, that's one of the problems with colors that don't move in water. You almost have to lose the edges. There, now we're ready to think about painting the centers. This is my favorite part. This time I'm purposely using colors that do move in water. This happens to be one. Oh boy, this one really loves to move. This is Windsor yellow. So I'm going to touch this Windsor yellow into the centers, and wherever it wants to go, it's going to go. Because what I did is, remember, I left these spiky so that the paint could flow out. These were enclosed so the paint couldn't flow in. So on the sun side of each one of these, I'm going to put pure Winsor yellow, a color that loves to move. Then I'm going to take some Winsor orange. This is a color that also loves to move. And just let it go. This is fun. Now there aren't as many colors that like to move, so unfortunately I am going to put the color quinacridone burnt orange next, but this color doesn't move much. But we'll still use it because it's the proper color for these centers. I notice I do have my paper flat now because I want this to move in all directions. And I'm thinking sun side to shadow side. So you notice every time I put a color down, I move a little closer to the edge towards the shadow side. Now the next color I'm going to use moves in water big time. And that's alizarin crimson. And this is the darkest color, darkest warm color. So of course that's going to go on this side, on my shadow side. And then, because I want some strong darks, we're also going to do a little bit of blue into this shadow side. Now the last color that I'm going to add is a little bit of Antwerp blue. And for this I'm going to switch to a little bit smaller brush so I don't put too much color in. So the Antwerp is simply going to be little dots, maybe some little lines. I'm thinking about how spiky this is. So you use the brush that's appropriate for the job, and this seems to be working pretty well. Little dots, little spikes. Now every now and then you get a little bit of the color running down. That's kind of cool too. If it wants to do that, let it. Don't be cleaning it up with a tissue. To me, that is, a white flower would reflect the color of that center. So these colors that have chosen to run down here, I just think of that as a gift. I think it's a wonderful thing. Now the next thing I'm going to do is some out of focus leaves and stems and grasses. These can be kind of a ditch flower, so it's not unusual for them to have grasses growing all over. Plus it's not unusual for the gardener to be too busy to get in and pull the weeds. So I always take advantage of that. Now I'm ready to do the fun part, and that's the out of focus grasses. Now remember, if your paper's starting to dry a bit, with your hand moving, just do a nice little subtle mist. Don't get too close. See, I'm actually quite high when I do this. And just using now a combination of quinacridone gold. I've got my little script brush. This is my favorite little brush for doing these little grasses. And I'm going to use Antwerp blue and quin gold. End up with a mixed color. Some will be darker and some will be lighter. I might even do a little Winsor yellow, which will melt out really soft. Ooh, that'll be fun. So here we go. I'm just going to start down here, holding the brush in an upright position. And then grasses always grow uphill the first time. And then as they come down the stem, they start going out across, kind of straight, and then they come down and go into a downward motion. And the whole secret with using this brush is to put the tip down, press it, and then release it. So you're getting what looks like a thick, thin line. Press, and then release. Press, and then release. It's real hard to stop though, it's so much fun. I think I'm gonna do one more. I like to cluster these. So by taking a little bit darker value, going up next to this one. I always try to go behind. I know it's kind of hard, but it's worth it. Well, now our painting is dry, so it's time to evaluate. What does our painting need? Sometimes I'll come in and do some more negative painting to pop it out a little bit darker. I don't think this one needs it, but let me just show you how to do it. So for example, if I were to take the same pinky color that I used here with the French ultramarine blue and mixed it into a similar color, but maybe a little darker. Oops. I could come in and pop it a little bit darker. Let's say I decided to go darker in here, under here, in here. And then I would do that same technique where I'd wet my brush, shake it out, touch it on a tissue, come back at right angles, and lose that edge. So you're just really popping out one edge and the other edge is lost. This is such an important technique. I know I've repeated it a lot, but you can't repeat it enough, really. It's such an excellent way to just add what you need. Like for example, here we could give it a nice darker value, move it along here, wet my brush, shake it out, touch it, come in at right angles, and you can't wait too long because as soon as it dries, you can't lose that edge. But it's nice to be able to come in and have this option where you can pop in the dark where you need it and then lose the edge and nobody even knows you were in there. So if your painting needs some of these darks, I would recommend taking a bit of time to go around and just put them where you need it. Just do little sections at a time. Now the other thing I can't wait to do is to come in here and do some crisp dark grasses. So I'm going to use a combination of quinacridone gold and Antwerp blue. Now on dry paper, every stroke is going to be crisp. So I'm going to start by loading my brush. This is my script brush. And it's not like a round brush. A round brush will be much shorter. The script brush is much longer. It holds so much paint. It's great. So holding it in an upright position, and I don't want it stiff. I want it to bend. This is a grassy shape. So by coming through here and now bending it, and actually going behind is important too, because that gives depth. So the fact that this is now going behind all these flowers is adding a feeling of depth. And then remember how I said these grasses always start in an upright position. So there we go. That one's up. That one's up. Now they're going to start going down. So keep it fluid. Notice I'm adding a little more water to this. It's kind of hard to draw on a dry surface. And now this time it's going to start going down even more. And what I do is I hold it in an upright position, tip up, press down. This time I have to go behind all these shapes. And then release it into this thin line. Tip up, press down, release into a fine line. And as often as possible, I try to go behind the flowers. Tip up, press, 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 and release. So as we're moving through here, this adds a lot of lovely depth to the piece. So I'm going to have some fun just adding a few more of these. And like I say, I like to cluster them. I have these out of focus here, so I would probably put a couple more here. I have some out of focus here, so I probably would come in. And one of the things that's real easy to do is to make them all the same. Try, if you're going down here, go steeper here, go up here, even cross them over if you have to. Now the next thing I need to think about is finishing the stems and the petals. The stems are going to be pretty easy. If the stem happens to be in a dark area, I'm going to leave it light. So you can see here I'm just putting in a little yellow. And as I come down here and I go into a lighter area, now I can come in and add a little bit darker. This happens to be some Antwerp. So I'll go in with the Antwerp and do less and less and less as I move up. Wet my brush and just kind of lose that edge into the softness here. Maybe tone it a little bit greener. But you can see we want to stay light against dark, dark against light. We could even go darker. Now another thing that's important is we want to put some of the color of our flowers, or even the color of the background. We could put just a little bit of purple in with this so that they're not screaming green. See, that looks better with just a little bit of purple in it to keep a continuity in the colors. Now my flowers, I'm going to keep my flowers white, but I'm also going to give them a little bit of reflected light coming down from the petals. Let's look at this one. I'm going to wet each petal just with some clean water. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to reflect, because this is a white flower, I'm going to reflect that color. So over here I'm going to start with the yellow. As I move around, I'm going to go into the colors that are here. This is kind of an orangey color. As we move around to the other side, we could actually add just a little bit of the quin orange. And so the very first thing I like to do is just to give them a little glow of reflected light. It's very exciting. In fact, that might be all it needs. But in the case of the petals that are against the dark here, I wouldn't mind pulling that warm yellow color a little bit further down. There. But now look at here, we have a petal here against a light background. So now what we're going to want to do is to pick up a little color. I don't know what color, let's see. How about if we take that orangey color and run it down? I'm going to wet it. There, that worked out pretty good. So it's almost like that light will make the petals a little bit darker here against the light background. But of course we'll keep them lighter in here so they read as white flowers. So that's how I'm going to finish this picture. I'm going to simply add some of these nice warm colors reflecting the centers. I'll be doing the reversals with the leaves. And we'll come back and take a look at the finished piece. Well, as you can see now, this has had some more work done on it. Mostly I wet each of these white petals, and then tipping the paper slightly, I put in some of those warm colors, going from the yellows to the oranges, so that we're giving the effect of reflecting some of the colors. And I basically came in and kept the stems light against the dark, and then I made them dark against the light, and put in, you know, we did the crisp shapes before. So now we have a finished painting. Now often people just can't stand it. They have to get in there and do a little bit more. But what I want to warn you is, as soon as you start putting hard shapes in here, you're going to lose that alla prima look. So for example, if you feel you have to do more, then what I recommend is, whenever possible, wet it. So for example, if you wanted to make this center just a little bit darker, you could kind of work your way around with the same colors that we did before, and you'll notice I wet it before I started. And then just work my way around the palette here. Now they're not going to bleed out unless you actually wet way beyond that area. And because we're working on Arches paper, see how we can wet this, and it's not going to reactivate the color underneath. And then we can go into a little bit deeper alizarin crimson here on this side. And then if we want to, we can just add a little bit of the Antwerp blue, and this will give us just a little bit darker shadow side. But very seldom do I go back into an alla prima style painting and paint more. I just kind of try to leave it the way it is. So other than a few little touch-ups like that, I would just say enjoy the alla prima look.